When people ask how I found out my fiancée was cheating on me, they usually expect something dramatic. A text popping up on a locked screen. Lipstick on a shirt. A stranger messaging me with screenshots and a fake sympathetic "you deserve to know." That's not what happened. I found out because she became more successful. My fiancée, Hannah, and I had been together for 6 years. We got engaged last fall in a crowded little restaurant where she cried before I even finished asking the question. We'd already booked a venue for late summer, paid the deposit, argued over seating charts we hadn't even made yet, and spent an embarrassing amount of money on sample invitations we ultimately decided looked too funeral. We were that couple. The one people assumed had made it through the hard part already. We lived in a 2-bedroom townhouse outside the city. Nothing glamorous, but stable. Predictable. We had routines. Thursday takeout. Sunday grocery runs. A running debate over whether the upstairs guest room should eventually become a nursery or an office. Our life wasn't exciting, but it felt solid, and at 32, solid had started to look a lot like happiness. Hannah worked in marketing for a mid-sized software company. I worked in logistics for a regional distributor, which means my job mostly consisted of fixing mistakes caused by people who got promoted for being confident with PowerPoint. Hannah was sharper than me in almost every way that impressed other people. Better communicator, better dressed, quicker on her feet socially. I was the dependable one. The guy people called when something heavy needed moving or a spreadsheet needed making sense of. That dynamic worked for us. Or I thought it did. Everything changed around January, when Hannah got assigned to what she kept calling a high-visibility internal project. She said it was the kind of thing that could finally put her in line for a director-track promotion. More meetings, more pressure, more late nights. She seemed excited and exhausted at the same time, which I took as proof it was real. At first I was proud of her. She started coming home after 8 p.m. 2 or 3 nights a week. Then 4. Sometimes she'd text around 6:30 and say, "Still at the office. Don't wait for me to eat." Other times she'd send a photo of a conference room table with laptops, energy drinks, and someone's half-eaten salad, like visual evidence attached to a warrant. That was clever, in retrospect. Not because the pictures were fake. Probably some of them weren't. But once someone starts giving you proof before you ask for it, they're not always being transparent. Sometimes they're training you. Her mood changed too, though not in a way that screamed affair. If anything, she seemed more affectionate in bursts. She'd come home tired and crawl into bed beside me, pressing her cold feet against my calves and mumbling apologies about work. On weekends, she'd suddenly want brunch or day trips or expensive little moments of connection that felt like maintenance disguised as romance. I didn't know enough then to understand guilt as a love language. My best friend, Derek, was around a lot during that time. I'd known Derek since college. We met because he borrowed my notes in an economics class and returned them with better handwriting than when I gave them to him. He was one of those guys who could fit anywhere. Barbecues, funerals, networking events, dive bars. Funny without trying too hard. Helpful without making it theatrical. The kind of friend your parents liked instantly because he looked like the adult version of potential. He'd also been one of the first people to welcome Hannah when we started dating. The three of us had history together by then: holidays, road trips, birthdays, one awful cabin weekend where the heater broke and Derek somehow made instant coffee on a camping stove like he was saving morale in wartime. If you'd asked me to name 2 people in my life I trusted most, it would have been Hannah and Derek. Which, looking back, feels less tragic than humiliating. The first weird moment happened on a Wednesday night. Hannah texted me around 7:10 that she was stuck in a late strategy meeting and probably wouldn't be home until after 9. I had leftover pasta, a basketball game on mute, and no reason to think twice about it. Then Derek called. He sounded distracted. Asked if I wanted to grab a drink because he was in my area. I said sure, but it would have to be nearby. He suggested a bar 15 minutes from our place. We met, had 2 beers, talked about nothing urgent, his landlord raising rent, my boss being useless, whether I was actually going to survive wedding planning without becoming the kind of man who uses the phrase linen texture unironically. At one point, I asked what he'd been doing near my side of town. He said, "Oh, I had to drop something off for a client." It was casual. Forgettable. Except around 9:20, when I got home, Hannah's car was already in the driveway. She was inside in sweatpants, hair tied up, makeup mostly off. She said the meeting got cancelled unexpectedly and she came straight home. I remember standing there in the kitchen, keys still in my hand, doing the math in a slow stupid way. If she'd come straight home, she should have been home before me. If Derek had just happened to be in the area, fine. But the timing of both things brushing against each other in the same 90-minute window created a feeling I couldn't name yet. Not proof. Just static. A week later, it happened again. Hannah was working late. Derek texted me around 8 asking if I wanted help choosing suits for the wedding because his cousin had gotten a discount at some menswear place. I joked that he was taking the best man role too seriously. He called me instead of replying and spent 10 minutes talking about ties like this was somehow urgent masculine business. Again, normal on the surface. Again, strange in accumulation. I don't want to rewrite history and pretend I knew from the start. I didn't. One of the most damaging things about betrayal is how hard it is to justify your own suspicion before you have facts. You feel petty. Insecure. Like you're one accusation away from becoming the problem. So I did what a lot of people do when something feels off but not actionable. I became extra reasonable. I asked Hannah more about work. What exactly is this project again? She answered smoothly. Internal brand restructuring. New leadership. Cross-department alignment. The kind of corporate vocabulary that sounds precise until you realize it can describe absolutely nothing. I asked if she liked the team she was working with. She hesitated just enough to look genuine. Some of them. I asked if she wanted me to bring dinner to the office one night. She smiled and said, "That's sweet, but security's weird after hours and honestly I wouldn't even know when I could step away." Every answer made sense. That's what kept me still. The thing that really got under my skin was her phone. Not because I saw anything on it. Because of how invisible it became. Hannah had never been one of those people who left her phone lying around recklessly, but she'd never guarded it either. Suddenly it was always face down. Always in the same room with her. If she went to shower, it came into the bathroom. If she went to fold laundry upstairs, it went too. Once, while she was cooking, a message banner lit up and disappeared before I could read it. She moved so fast to pick up the phone that she actually knocked over the wooden spoon rest. I looked at her. She laughed too hard and said, "Work never leaves me alone." Again. Plausible. Plausibility is hell. The first actual evidence came from something embarrassingly analog. Mileage. I had to borrow Hannah's car one Saturday because my truck was in the shop. While adjusting the seat, I noticed the odometer. I'm weirdly good with numbers tied to routines. I knew roughly how much she drove in a normal week, commute, errands, Pilates on Tuesdays. The mileage was off by more than it should have been. Not wildly. Just enough. I told myself maybe she'd gone to a client site. Maybe she'd run wedding errands. Maybe I needed to stop turning normal variants into detective fiction. Then I opened the center console looking for a phone charger and found a parking receipt from a residential garage downtown. Time stamped 10:48 p.m. on a Thursday. Hannah had told me she was at the office until nearly midnight that Thursday. Her office did not have a residential garage. That was the first moment my stomach really dropped. I took a photo of the receipt and put it back exactly where I found it. That night I barely spoke at dinner. Hannah noticed and asked if I was stressed about work. I said yes because suddenly every lie in our house seemed to arrive pre-approved. The next few days I did something I'm not proud of but would absolutely do again. I checked our cell phone bill. I couldn't read the content of messages, obviously, but I could see repeated call durations and numbers. One number showed up over and over, usually on nights she stayed late. Sometimes for 3 minutes. Sometimes 20. Sometimes just after midnight. I copied it into my contacts and searched it on Venmo, Instagram, and cash transfer apps like some budget private investigator. Nothing. Then I typed it into Google. It pulled up an old apartment rental listing. The number belonged to Derek. I remember sitting at my desk at work, staring at the screen so long it dimmed. There are discoveries that arrive like explosions. This was more like a floor collapsing quietly underneath me. Even then, part of me still fought it. Maybe Derek was helping with the proposal. Maybe Hannah was venting about me. Maybe there was some explanation ugly enough to explain secrecy but not this. It's amazing what the brain offers itself when the alternative is total rupture. I decided not to confront either of them until I had something undeniable. I wish I could say that was strategic. Really it was cowardice mixed with survival instinct. Once you say it out loud, your life changes shape. I think I knew that and wanted one more day of ignorance, even while chasing the end of it. The undeniable moment came on a Monday. Hannah texted that she had another late work session and would probably stay until 9:30. Around 7, Derek sent me a meme about married men disappearing into hardware stores for spiritual reasons. I replied something stupid. He reacted with a laughing emoji. My hands actually shook. At 8 p.m., I left the house and drove downtown. I had Derek's address from helping him move 2 years earlier. He lived in a newer apartment building near a strip of restaurants and overpriced coffee places full of people pretending laptops are personalities. I parked across the street and told myself I was crazy. At 8:17, Hannah's car pulled into the building garage. I sat there and watched the red taillights disappear. There is no dramatic way to describe what that feels like. No single word covers the combination of nausea, vindication, humiliation, and grief. It's like your body understands the truth faster than your mind does and starts reacting before your thoughts catch up. I stayed in the car for 15 minutes because I didn't know what else to do. I thought about barging in. I thought about calling her. I thought about driving away and never telling either of them why. Instead, I did the dumbest useful thing of my life. I took a picture of her car entering the garage. Then I waited. At 10:06, the garage door opened again and Hannah's car came out. She was alone. Or at least visibly alone. I followed her home from 3 cars back like every cliché husband in every thriller I used to laugh at. She walked in the front door at 10:31 carrying her laptop bag and a look on her face that I will never forget now because I know what it meant. She was transitioning between versions of herself. Work Hannah becoming home Hannah. I was sitting at the kitchen table when she came in. She startled. "You're still up?" "Yeah," I said. "How was work?" She set her bag down carefully. "Long." "Where?" She blinked. "What? Where was work tonight?" "At the office." I slid my phone across the table with the photo of her car pulling into Derek's garage. The silence after that was so complete I could hear the refrigerator motor kick on. She looked at the photo. Then at me. Then back at the photo. And instead of denying it immediately, she sat down. That was how I knew it was worse than just sex. If she'd panicked, maybe there'd still have been some crude simplicity to it. But she sat like someone arriving at the end of an argument she'd been having with herself for weeks. "How long?" I asked. She started crying before she answered. Not the loud kind. The kind that looks almost insulting because it seems neat, private, curated for sympathy. 3 months, she said. I laughed once. It sounded horrible even to me. With Derek. She nodded. I asked if they were in love. She covered her face and said, "I don't know. That phrase should be registered as emotional fraud. You know enough to lie for 3 months, meet in private apartments, invent projects, manage schedules, text my best friend while planning my wedding. But when consequences arrive, suddenly everything becomes confusion." I asked how it started. According to her, Derek had been helping with some wedding logistics while I was busy. Coffee turned into venting. Venting turned into feeling seen. She said things between us had started feeling practical, future-focused, heavy with checklists and decisions. Derek made her feel spontaneous again. It's remarkable how often selfish people describe their own impulses like natural disasters. I asked if everyone had been laughing at me. She said no. I asked if Derek had ever been in my house after sleeping with her. She didn't answer fast enough. That was answer enough. I called him right there. He picked up on the second ring, cheerful at first. "What's up?" I said, "You should come get her." Silence. Then. "What?" "Hannah's here. She told me everything. So if she left anything at your apartment, now would be a good time to inventory it." He started in with my name in that careful de-escalation tone people use when they know they deserve none of the grace they're asking for. I hung up. Hannah kept trying to explain. Not justify, exactly. Just explain, as if the architecture of betrayal mattered more than the structure itself. She said she never meant to hurt me. She said it happened gradually. She said she still loved me. I said, "Then you have a strange way of showing love." Eventually I told her to pack a bag and leave. She asked if I was really ending 6 years over something complicated. That sentence took whatever pity I had left and burned it clean out of me. Cheating is many things. Complicated is what people call it when they want to avoid simpler words like selfish, deliberate, and cruel. She left around midnight with 2 suitcases and the framed engagement photo from our bookshelf still sitting where it had always been because apparently even she couldn't decide if that would be too much. Derek came by the next day. Not to fight. Not to defend himself convincingly. Mostly, I think, to perform remorse in person because some men confuse eye contact with accountability. He looked awful. I'll give him that. Pale, exhausted, like shame had finally interrupted his sleep. He said, "I'm sorry," in about 12 different ways. He said he never planned for this to happen. That he hated himself. That he'd been trying to end it. That he cared about me. That our friendship mattered. There is no more insulting sentence than a traitor reminding you how much you mean to him. I asked one question. How many times were you in this house knowing what you were doing? He stared at the floor and said, "I don't know." I opened the front door and pointed outside. He left. Then came the practical demolition phase. Canceling vendors. Telling family. Watching both our parents struggle to decide whether heartbreak or embarrassment should take the lead. Returning gifts. Explaining to people why the wedding was off without giving them enough detail to turn my life into conference material. My mother cried when I told her. Hannah's mother cried harder. Hannah's father asked if there was any room for perspective, which is exactly the kind of sentence a man asks when he wants morality discounted at family rates. Derek's sister texted me to say he was in a dark place and hoped I wouldn't abandon him forever. That message actually made me laugh. There's something surreal about becoming the victim of betrayal and then being subtly assigned partial responsibility for the emotional stability of the people who betrayed you. For weeks, Hannah kept texting. Long paragraphs. Then short ones. Then memories. Then apologies sharpened into accusations. She said I was making it impossible for anyone to repair the damage. As if repair had been waiting patiently at the door this whole time and my attitude was the only thing keeping it outside. I blocked her after she asked if I could at least admit I had been emotionally distant during wedding planning. That, to me, is the final form of cheater logic. Commit the wound, then submit a note on the victim's tone. As for Derek, losing him felt strange in a different way. With Hannah, the grief was obvious. I missed who I thought she was. I missed the future I'd organized my life around. I missed the ordinary shape of having someone there. With Derek, it was weirder. More skeletal. Like discovering a beam inside your house was hollow and then trying to decide whether the years it held anything up were real. People kept saying, "At least you found out before the wedding." And they were right. But there's a cold comfort to that phrase. Like telling someone whose house burned down that at least it happened during daylight. Technically true. Emotionally useless. The worst part wasn't even the sex. It wasn't the lying about work, or the fake meetings, or the fact that my best friend probably knew my fiancée's body better than I did by the end. It was the collaboration. That's what betrayal really is when two trusted people do it together. Collaboration. Scheduling. Editing. Tone management. Two people separately looking at your face and deciding to continue. That realization changed something permanent in me. Not in the dramatic internet way where I swore off relationships and bought weights and started posting quotes about loyalty over black and white wolf pictures. Nothing that stupid. Just a quieter shift. I trust slower now. I pay attention when stories arrive too polished. When explanations sound like press releases. When two people I love suddenly develop a rhythm that excludes me by half a beat. Maybe that's damage. Maybe that's wisdom. Probably both. A few months ago, I heard through mutual friends that Hannah and Derek didn't even last. Apparently once the secrecy was gone, so was whatever spark they thought had justified detonating my life. That information didn't heal me the way people assume it should. It just made the whole thing seem even cheaper. All that lying. All that erosion. All that loss. For something that couldn't survive daylight.